So that is an absolute world-class deposit, a world-class mining operation. Barrick, in fact, is in the process of investing an additional $1 billion, billion with a B, into the expansion of what is already, a massive world-class mining operation. So, so you've got sort of this, two sides of the coin here where
Jeff Wilson, Precipitate Gold Corp. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Andy.
Well, I came across you as actually my daughter, who's my assistant, Casey. She emailed to you, and I had to reach out. What was the most interesting thing to me? You're in the Dominican Republic, and that was very, for lack of a better word, odd to me. You just don't see that very much. So I immediately became intrigued. Why are you in the Dominican Republic? And tell me about that.
Yeah, no, it is a slightly off the beaten path jurisdiction for mineral exploration and mining, no question, in the minds of most people. We've been there since 2012, so we've been there a long time now. And part of the reason we are there is that there was a major discovery by a company called Gold Quest Mining in and around that time, 2012. And, they made a world-class discovery. Their share price went from, 3 cents to $2 almost overnight. They raised a bunch of money, and suddenly the market was looking at this jurisdiction as game on. We were able to go in and almost immediately and pick up a large land package immediately adjacent to them and in the same sort of geological terrain. And that's sort of been our primary asset for some time, really, since then. But as it relates to the jurisdiction, the thing that people aren't particularly aware of is that in spite of the fact that it's largely recognized as a tourism destination, especially for those of us in Canada and the US, one of the world's largest, or certainly Latin America's largest gold mining operations is located within the Dominican Republic, and that's Barrick's Pueblo Viejo mine. So that is an absolute world-class deposit, a world-class mining operation. Barrick, in fact, is in the process of investing an additional $1 billion, billion with a B, into the expansion of what is already, a massive world-class mining operation. So, so you've got sort of this, two sides of the coin here where, the DR is not really recognized for mining, but mining has been a substantial part of their economy for a long time. And in fact, at one point, I don't know if this is still the case, but at one point, Barrick's Pueblo Viejo was the single largest contributor to the country's GDP. So the government gets mining, the government appreciates mining, and there's lots of mineral exploration still to be explored within the country.
So that brings a couple of thoughts and then a couple of questions to me. I guess I never heard that was one of Barrick's biggest mines, mines right there. And that's just completely foreign to me and very surprising. And it also makes sense that they kept it a secret. If that's that right. So they get it all to themselves, develop it all to themselves, right?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's happened in recent years, and we're part of that, and it's sort of another part of our story, is that Barrick has, quite publicly disclosed that the Dominican Republic is a jurisdiction that they want to expand their presence within. And so for a number of years, in fact, most of the time that we had been operating in the Dominican Republic, Barrick's sole landholding in the country was the mining permits and the mining operation. In recent years, they've started to expand their exploration team in the Dominican Republic. They've started to acquire additional ground in the Dominican Republic. And I think taking the view that, hey, we're hunkered down here. We've got a massive operation. We've got personnel. We've got a team. Why don't we? And partly this is Mark Bristow, the CEO. His mandate is sort of brownfields exploration in and around where they already are. Around the world as a means of growth. And so the Dominican Republic, from a sort of an exploration potential or new deposits potential, is something that Barrick is looking at as well. So you're starting to see that transition for the country back toward exploration and finding more. And I think that's where we fit in, and where we've been lucky enough to be there for long enough that we feel we've got some of the most prospective ground, or more prospective ground, for that possibility of new discoveries.
Okay, so immediately I'm intrigued just from the few minutes of our conversation because you are off the beaten path. Nobody knows where you are, but then Barrick is right there. So my antenna and every investor's antenna should go up. But the next question I would have is the permitting process. What does it take to get permitted really to mine there, to build a mine there? And that might not be you building that mine, but that would be whoever would come in and, whatever the future holds, buy out the project, whether that's Barrick or somebody else. What hurdles are they going to have? And what's your experience dealing with the powers that be in the jurisdiction?
Yeah, permitting on a couple of different levels is, admittedly can be slow and a little bit arduous. As it really, even as it relates to exploration, sometimes drilling permits can take, 6 to 8 months, which is a long time in our world in the junior exploration business. In terms of, sort of mine permitting or exploitation permitting, there's been an interesting transition just in the last few months. So previously there was this sort of unusual process whereby, you make your application to go from exploration to exploitation. You make your application to the mining department, they approve it, they send it to the mines ministry, they approve it, and then it would go to the president of the country's desk. And, it becomes a little bit of a political hot potato at that point. I mean, I think we all can acknowledge that mining is a bit of a sensitive topic, whether you're in the Dominican Republic or Canada or the US. So it became kind of this logjam where things would sit on the president's desk, and nobody wants to kind of commit political suicide by signing something that gets pushback. So so that's delayed several projects. In recent months, we've seen the government adjust its policies a little bit to take that responsibility off the president of the country's desk and bring it back to the Ministry of Mines. And so part of what you're seeing, if you watch some of the Dominican players, if you will, of the listed companies, there's been a bit of a pop here in recent months in some of their share prices and market values, because I think there's a growing understanding that the government, in fact, wants to sort of streamline the process a little bit to allow anyone who's made a discovery and has found a deposit to try to push that through environmental impact studies, community relations, and ultimately pre-feasibility or feasibility study, before it then becomes, a bigger decision of, yes or no. So let's, the government taking the view, let's find out as much information as we can in terms of the impacts of these potential mines, and then make an educated decision on permitting. So I like the way that they've transitioned here recently, and I think it's an indication that they see mining as a viable, important part of their economy, and they recognize that they need to improve the process if they want to entice, foreign investment and the work that's necessary to find the next mining deposit.
Okay, gotcha. So let's take a deeper dive now into the company. We'll start with the projects itself in the Dominican Republic, because that's what I'm most interested in. And then let's talk about the team. And then we'll talk about share structure of the stock, if that's okay with you. So tell me about the project. What do you got there? I believe you have two different projects, if I'm not mistaken, in Dominican Republic. How many ounces of gold? And I assume you have other elements as well, but yeah, I believe you're just you have mostly gold, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, primarily gold targets. There's a reasonable amount of copper in certainly within one of our projects, if not two. We actually have three total. So our primary, or what was our initial entree into the country, was a project called Wanda Herrera. And Wanda Herrera is adjacent to that company I mentioned earlier, Gold Quest. So Gold Quest has about 3-4 million ounces gold equivalent, depending on how you calculate it, and is moving towards development. We've got a number of targets there. We've been working that project since 2012. A little bit of fits and starts based on the way the markets have been, and sometimes we've been more aggressive than others. So that's a project that is, quite well permitted. Lots of drill targets that have permits, and it's kind of been on pause until we felt like the political environment was right, and we feel like that now. We've got a project called Ponton, which is over closer towards Barrick's Pueblo Viejo mine. Again, we own all of these projects 100%, no underlying deals or underlying payments or work obligations to anyone. Ponton is a project that is, relatively small, but it's only 25 kilometers away from Barrick's Pueblo Viejo, and is in the same sort of geological environment, and is drill ready and has a permit for drilling there as well. So that's another project that is fairly early stage. None of these projects have ounces in the ground or resources. It's relatively early stage exploration. Our team is really, as we'll get into, is more of sort of a discovery type team. And then our third asset is adjacent to, essentially surrounds Barrick's Pueblo Viejo, right up against their claim boundary on three sides. And that is a project that after we acquired it in 2018 or 2019 for $25,000 cash and some shares, at a time when gold and mining was completely out of favor and everybody was going after cannabis and other things. We acquired that on the cheap, I believe. We spent about $300,000, and then 18 months later, Barrick contacted us and said, "Look, we'd like to do some sort of a deal." So we entered into an earning agreement with Barrick, where Barrick now has to spend $22 million US before 2030, the year 2030. So they've got that 10-year time frame to spend $22 million to earn a 70% interest in our project. So that's being fully financed and funded by Barrick. It's, like I say, it's adjacent to their major mining operation on three sides. So it's very strategic, and that earning agreement continues on. Now we're in the fourth or the fifth year. They spent about $5 million to date, and I anticipate that we'll have some news on their planned work here in Q1 of this year.
Okay, if I can deep dive into that, $22 million, they spent $5 on what? On drilling, I'm assuming, just on drilling?
Yeah, on drilling. I mean, major companies they're not quite as efficient as we are in the junior mining world in terms of stretching a dollar. So, they spent that on a lot of different equipment and geophysical work and geochemical work and analyzing old data and old drill core. But they have conducted a couple of drill programs, and the goal here is that they've delineated two distinct targets on sort of one on either side of their mining operation, that they anticipate drilling both of those this year, or perhaps even in the coming months. So most of that money has really been maybe not spent on drilling, but on identifying advancing targets to a drill stage, and they've done a couple of rounds of drilling and anticipate doing more. The other thing in this earning agreement is they don't just have to spend money, because you and I could go down to the Dominican Republic and spend $22 million.
It's fine.
Yeah, we'd have a good time. But they've got to also, at the end of that 10-year earning period, they've got to deliver a feasibility study. So it kind of keeps them honest in terms of, like, look, you can send us all the receipts for all the expenditures you want, but you don't earn your 70% unless you produce a pre-feasibility study. And that's, like I say, that's kind of important for us to kind of keep them on track with smart expenditures.
Yeah. What's the ETA of that feasibility study? When do they have to produce that?
They've got to produce that by April of 2030. So, I mean, there's a long timeline here, but feasibility studies take a long time. There's got to be a lot of drilling, a lot of technical data. There's metallurgical work that goes into that. So, it's not a simple or inexpensive process. And quite frankly, to produce that, they'd probably in total have to spend more than $22 million to do that. So we're happy with the deal. We're happy with the work they were doing. I'll admit, when we signed the deal, it was right in the early days of COVID. And so some of their early work took a long time to kind of get on a roll, if you will. But I feel like in the last couple of years, they've been a little bit more concerted in terms of, the work that they've been doing and the planning they're doing. So we're pleased with the arrangement there. It's nice to have a partnership with one of the world's biggest mining companies. And in the kind of market we've had over the last couple of years, it's nice to have that work financed by someone else. The other wrinkle in that came up in that arrangement was there was a point in time a couple of years ago where, during their exploration on our project, they identified a couple of parcels of ground that they felt they needed for infrastructure for their mine. And so they wanted to kind of take those out of our earning agreement. And we were able to, after a long negotiation process, and it's sterile ground. It's ground that had been drilled. We knew there was nothing there. It was really just, real estate. Anyway, we were able to come to an arrangement with them whereby they wrote us a check for $5 million US and gave us a 3% NSR on that ground that they then have sort of put into their mining operations. So speaking of money in the difficult, tough markets, we were in a really nice position over the last couple of years where we've been cashed up. We didn't have to issue any shares for that cash. That was just a straight cash payment for some ground. And we're protected by the fact that we've got an NSR on that ground if anything material were to ever come from it. So it's been a really good arrangement for us in this earning agreement with Barrick.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It really does, actually. But that leads me to just a couple of things. I'm making an assumption here. I'm sure that the infrastructure is great then because of where you're at, but just comment on the infrastructure and how easy or how hard. Maybe there's no power there, but just tell me a little bit about the infrastructure.
Yeah, the infrastructure there's quite good. I've driven around a lot of the sort of the roads in around on our property, where of course there isn't a mining operation on our property, but still the access and infrastructure is quite good. There's power lines overhead in a lot of parts of the property area, and because Barrick is there and has been, and that's been a mining operation for many years. Local people. Again, mining is always going to have a little bit of a sensitivity in any community, but this is a region of the country where a lot of people's livelihood is drawn from this mining operation. So local suppliers and there's local geologists in the area, and so yeah, it from an infrastructure standpoint, it's very good, and in terms of trained staff and all those kinds of things, there's a good workforce in the area as well.
Got it. Okay, so tell me a little bit about the team, the team that you have, and your personal background.
Yeah, so we've got, again, a relatively lean, efficient team. I think we've got a balanced team as well in terms of people's background and skill sets. The company is managed by myself and Michael Moore, who is my vice president of exploration. So Michael and I are sort of the 1-2 team in terms of hands-on day-to-day. This is fully our focus is Precipitate. Mike spends a lot of time in the field in the DR. And Mike obviously has a geological background. I'm more of a capital markets guy, marketing, IR, corporate side of the business. And, so keeping the company financed and identifying deals and transactions and that sort of thing. From the board level or on the board level, we've got, again, an astute board. We've got Adrian Fleming, who's our chairman, former Placer Dome. He was involved with a couple of junior companies that have made nice transactions or buyouts by mid-tier major companies. One of his successes was a discovery up in the Yukon called White Gold, the White Gold deposit, which was a major buyout, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. Alistair Waddell is on our board. Alistair is a geologist, formerly at Kinross, looking at early stage exploration potential for Kinross. So he's sort of scoured the planet, looking for opportunities. So has a keen eye for projects that have potential and are worth going after. And a very important part of our board is Lon Shaver, and Lon is the president of Silver Corp. So sort of a junior producer, if you will. Again, a former investment banker. Lon and I worked together many years ago as well in the junior mining space. So very astute guy, really great on sort of deal terms and, novel ideas as it relates to business transactions, that kind of thing. And of course, heading up a company like Silver Corp obviously has great experience with, mining, operations and the kind of projects that'll make it and not make it. So that's sort of the team, if you will. We've got some other people in the Dominican Republic that are important for us. We've got a country manager there that, ensures that we're doing all the right things in country and well connected in country. But that's sort of the lean and mean team.
Yeah. So one of the things that I liked about you specifically is your background in the capital markets and in IR, what you typically find in junior mining companies. And this is no disrespect to geologists, but geologists like to put a whole bunch of holes in the ground, but which is great. That's obviously why we're here, but that doesn't always move the stock forward. So yeah, that stuck out to me as well. Let's talk about the share structure. And I know the answer to some of these questions, but I want you to answer them already. I was reading your last quarter, I want to say, or the last financial statement that you had posted on your website. How many shares do you have outstanding that are fully diluted, and how much cash do you have in the bank? And the reason I'm asking those two questions is if I'm an investor here, I want to know what's the next dilution going to be, if you would. And then I also want to know is there enough cash to sustain yourself through the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Yeah, no, great questions, and I think important questions for investors. We've been very fortunate, and maybe we can take some credit for the way that we've negotiated and managed some things. But to put ourselves in a position where we have not been at the mercy of the market as it relates to equity financings has been a bit of a blessing over the last couple of years. So we've got 130 million shares issued and outstanding, about 150 million fully diluted. Yep.
Where are the warrants written at? What strike price?
There are no outstanding warrants on the company because we haven't financed since 2021.
Jeff, that is music to my ears.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Yeah. No. Again, these are the kinds of things. Again, I don't know whether we're really smart or we're really lucky, but this goes back to your point about management. I mean, business acumen here in our space is sometimes overlooked by, as you say, just the need to run around and poke holes in the ground. I think you need to set yourself up on a business level for success. You have to apply a bit of strategy, and again, I don't want to take all the credit. We've been lucky in some regard as it relates to the Barrick transaction and things like that, and a cash injection. But yeah, not having any warrants out is nice. The only thing on top of the issued and outstanding are options, and that's how we incentivize employees and consultants and directors. So I think that's reasonable. We're not maxed out on options or anything like that. And in terms of our cash, we've got about $5 million in the bank, Canadian. All of our projects are owned 100%, so we don't have any balloon payments down the road, or we've got to spend X amount of dollars on a project to keep it in good standing. And yeah, so when you take the shares outstanding, the cash in the bank, and you look at our market cap, we're not really getting an awful lot of credit for the projects that you and I have just spent the last, however long talking about. We're trading only a little bit more than cash at present time. The last couple of days, the share price has performed, and so maybe that's changed a bit. But as recently as a few weeks ago, we were, our enterprise value was pretty small, given that we've got to deal with Barrick, we've got a project next to a multi-million ounce deposit, and we've got money in the bank.
Yeah, actually, you had a really good run since the new year, but so has just about everybody else. So I think that's more or less indicative of the market heating up. Let me ask you real quick here, and I'm just looking down at my notes just to make sure that I check all the boxes here. Is there any news that you see coming in the first quarter that you can talk about or people should be aware of?
Yeah, actually, this quarter should be fairly active for us in terms of news flow, and then I hope it continues to be active beyond the first quarter, and some of that will be success contingent, of course. But yeah, I mean, we put out a news release yesterday indicating that we were sort of re-engaging or recommencing exploration at our Wanda Herrera project. If you sort of go back to August of last year, we sort of started to resurrect that project with some news and some sort of low level, boots on the ground kind of exploration, mapping, sampling. And we had some really compelling numbers, including, rock samples up to 73 grams per ton gold kind of thing, which is as high a sample as I think has been reported anywhere in that district. So, we got some joy and identified some new target areas within a project, like I said, we've had since 2012, and yet still new zones, new discoveries, new anomalies being identified, which was encouraging. So coming into this year and announcing yesterday that we're going to recommence at some of these new discoveries, some of our existing discoveries, there will be follow-up news to come on the back of the fact that we'll have some boots on the ground here in the coming months. Shifting over to our deal with Barrick, I anticipate that Barrick will initiate some drilling, and I would like to think that will be this quarter. So I think you could have not only some news on the commencement of a drill program, but then of course you've also got the all-important assay results to follow, and we'll see what comes of that, whether that's this quarter or into next quarter. I'm not sure. So yeah, I think there'll be a steady flow of news I anticipate here over the coming months, and then again, it really comes down to what the results of that work looks like will dictate what we do next.
Okay. Excellent. So people want to get in touch with you or find out more about the company. How do they do that?
Yeah. So our website is precipitategold.com. And there's all kinds of, there's a current PowerPoint presentation or corporate presentation, all the news releases, all the information on the projects and people. But of course, people are welcome to reach out to the company directly by email or phone. All that contact information is there. And, and that stuff comes to me. I don't have like a big team underneath me that sifts through that stuff. If you want to reach out and get a direct answer from the CEO, I'm very responsive to emails and phone calls or voicemails and happy to talk to people.
Excellent. Okay. Jeff Wilson, Precipitate Gold. What's your ticker symbol?
Yeah. So in Canada on the TSX Venture, we are PRG, and on the OTCQB, we are PREIF.
Excellent. I will put all of this in the show notes below this on both the podcast as well as the YouTube channel. Jeff Wilson, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy. It's been a pleasure.